Hi, good afternoon. Firstly, thank you so much for having me. I realize that I'm standing between you and lunch, so I'll try and make it somewhat interactive. So the topic given to me is how do you scale and build house of brands? So just by way of background, I'm a little bit of an accidental entrepreneur. I spent about 15 years in consulting in McKinsey, doing mostly automotive product development work, and then met two real entrepreneurs, Sachin and Binny, who had started Flipkart, and sort of accidentally got on to brands called Mensa Brands, which we've rebranded into Brand.me. What we're trying to do is to build brands in two spaces, health and wellness and lifestyle. And both these are sort of spaces with a lot of tailwinds and are global spaces. The thesis was, can you create a new version of Unilever in India? Brand building is fundamentally changing for two reasons. First, distribution is a lot more democratic. So if you think about, most traditional FMCG companies, distribution is a moat. You have a lot of distributors, and that is the way to get your product through. Now in India, for 120 rupees, you can essentially get to 20,000 pin codes in India. And for $4 or $5, you can actually get to almost anywhere in the US or anywhere in the world. So distribution is now a lot more democratic. Second is brand building has become a lot more online. So people may buy the product offline, but they discover the brand online, and they discover consumer journeys, and they discover the brand story online. So brand building is fundamentally no longer about TV, but it's about being in the community. It's about ensuring that you're top of mind in the community that you want to be in and the consumer set that you want to be in. And the third difference is, I think product development used to be more art than science. Now you have a lot more data. You have an ability to be a lot more scientific about product development, especially in the consumer brand space, because you have a digital trail. So the big three things, distribution, brand building, and NPD, new product development, all have changed. So the goal was at Brand.me, how can we create global consumer brands from India for the world? So we started about 4 years ago. We have about 10 brands in two spaces. And I think it's been an interesting journey. There were 2 or 3 sort of lessons as I look back. We are now about a 200 million run rate company, and I was speaking to someone earlier, and we're actually been profitable now. So we've sort of built it profitably and scaled it profitably, which in the consumer digital first brand space is quite hard to do. And so maybe 2 or 3 things that sort of are lessons learned on what works. And then maybe I'd love to see if we can open it up for questions and make it a little bit more interactive before my session comes to an end. So the 3 big lessons learned. The first is where to play. Most times people pick the largest markets in consumer brands. And almost always that's the wrong answer, because the largest markets are often the most competitive. So it's very, very hard to make money. Right? And eventually the goal of any business, technology, digital, etc., is to create surplus value, right? Especially if you think you're eventually going to go public. So pick niche spaces. So our brands, for example, My Fitness is a peanut butter brand. Peanut butter is a niche category. We sort of picked healthy snacking as a category and sort of really built and scaled My Fitness as a brand around it. Or we have another brand, which is a party celebration brand. It's called Party Props. Party Props, essentially, we sort of make a celebration magical. You can buy a box of balloon streamers, etc. But essentially, why is that interesting? Because it's a disorganized space. It's an unorganized space. Most people would have actually gone to a street somewhere to buy your party supplies. Now you can actually bring it to you either through quick commerce, direct to consumer, or e-commerce platforms. Why is that an interesting space rather than a very large space? Why should you go after that? Because one, niche spaces by definition have lower competition and therefore higher gross margins. Whether you sell a balloon for $3.99, $4.99, $5.99, $6.99, doesn't matter as long as you actually get high quality and products that give you consumer love. So the first lesson is pick niche spaces. The one question that always comes through is, if you pick a niche space, then how do you build at scale? How do you build 150 million? How do you build a 1,000 crore brand, right? The answer to that actually is going global. So the second lesson is, I think Indian consumer brands can go global. You need one of 2 things. You need a structural sourcing or design advantage. So, you're sourcing in India, designing in India, and if there's a manufacturing base that caters to it, that really helps. And the second is you need to have global ambitions. Most times, by the way, I'll give you another example. We have a brand called Majestic Pure, which is a global aromatherapy brand. Aromatherapy is essential oils, body oils, reed diffusers, things like that. We have always manufactured essential oils in India because we grow a lot of them, right? Jasmine is grown here. We actually export oils in bulk, but we have never ever built a brand. And the reason we haven't built a brand is because either we believe we don't know a consumer or it's too difficult to compete in the West. And I don't think that's true. We actually make the brand, we make the product, we do the designing, but we don't build the brand, which is where all the value lies. So the first is pick spaces that are not extremely competitive, right? Where there is a tailwind. The second lesson is don't be afraid to go global. I think we can build global brands from India. And I think it's quite important and it's very possible. And I think the next Unilever, the next Reckitt Benckiser, the next P&G, I think can come from India. And I think you can actually build it out and build it very large. The third lesson, if I look back in the last 4 years, is technology is a great equalizer. And using technology in every element of brand building is going to be a game changer. Let me give you a few examples. If you take product development, most times product development is actually art, like I was saying. However, now you can get search trends, you can get, there's a very famous report in the Amazon system globally called SQP, which is a search query performance report, which says, how is a search term trending up or trending down? So if you can pick up on social media and actually get e-commerce platforms and look at data, you can make much better decisions. We launched a rosemary hair oil in the US 2 years ago before it became a trend. It's become the #1 best-selling product for one of our brands, Botanica. And the reason we did that was we picked up the fact that rosemary as a term was trending. And that was not possible 10 years ago because you didn't have the data. Now you do. So product development can be a lot more scientific. The second is for any of you who sell on e-commerce, ads and pricing are two areas which are actually very difficult to do. Now with a lot of AI that's actually happening, we have built out 2 agents, one for ads, one for pricing, that can go on 24/7. So we're able to run 100,000 campaigns. And that's a great equalizer. Now you can compete with the P&G because your agent for ads is just as good, if not better, and can run a lot of campaigns, right? So using technology in every element of what you do to lower the cost and improve the efficiency of operations is the third big lever that I think really helps brands grow profitably and sustainably. I think if you do these 3 things, pick an area where there's not a lot of competition. Second, make sure, by the way, that you are thinking global from day 0. And third, use technology to create some unfair advantages for you. I think it's very possible to build large 1,000 crore brands from India, which I think are market dominated, right, in whichever niche space that you're in. And that's a little bit of where we're trying to go, right? So just again, maybe to summarize, on House of Brands and the advantage of House of Brands and how do you build for scale in India. I think there is a next 10, 15, 20-year opportunity. If you look at the last 20 years, what industries have gone global? IT, pharma, auto components. I think the next 20 years, consumer brands will go global. And why will they go global? As I was mentioning again, distribution is democratic, marketing is mostly digital, and technology is an equalizer. And so I think there's a unique opportunity for an entrepreneur in India to say, can I build large global brands? And I think the advantage of having a house of brands is that we are able to build out some common areas like technology, like operations, etc., that give you the structural advantage that you would not have if you just built one brand. So that's a little bit of what we're trying to do in terms of what we're building at BrandMe. Just to make it a little bit more interactive, would love to take a few questions so that I can still stick with time and make sure that everybody is out for lunch at the appropriate time. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Narayanan. You want to take one question or 2 questions maybe? Quickly? Anybody?
So what would be your advice on services brands? We've mostly spoken products.
Yeah, I think great question. I think there is a massive opportunity in services as well. Harder to scale till recently because it's very hard to keep very consistent service levels as you scale. I think the one big thing that is changing is depending on what service you're offering. Large parts of service, except for the actual delivery, can be automated now using AI, and that allows you to scale. So I think it's a big opportunity as well over the next 5-10 years. I mean, the recent public listing of Urban Company clearly shows that I think there's a big business to be built.
We can take another very short question.
Yeah.
There is a service or something.
Sorry,
you talked about SQP of Amazon. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so it's called an SQP report. It's a standard Amazon report that actually comes out. The reason that's important is you get a trend of what search terms are going up, what search terms are coming down. So one interesting thing for us in that is, as you think about shampoos, conditioners, and hair care, one of the things you noticed is people are searching less for brands and more for ingredients. And once you pick that up as an insight, you can actually build a very different product. Right?
The product development can be easier,
Yeah.
more scientific. So how can I access that report?
I think if you have an Amazon account, you can access it. You can chat
Okay.
offline. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll find out.